Are you the type that changes your own oil? Or maybe you mow your own grass? Or remodel your entire house? Are you a do-it-yourselfer? Are you addicted to YouTube? Spending 2 minutes to learn how to play the piano? Do you do your own retirement planning? If you do, this is the show for you. Welcome, everyone. Show's called Your Money or Wealth. Joe Anderson here. I'm a certified financial planner, president of Pure Financial Advisors. And of course, we're with the big man. He's right over there. There's Big Al Clopine. We're going to break things down for you. We live in this do-it-yourself world, which is phenomenal, which is awesome. But if you make a mistake with your overall retirement plan, you might not get a chance to fix it. If I blow up my shower, I can call a plumber and fix it. If you blow up your retirement, guess what? You're going back to work. That's today's Financial Focus. Check this survey out. This is by the Employee Benefits Research Institute. And what this tells me, right? They do these surveys every single year, and they survey people about their money, their readiness for retirement. This statistic tells me that people lie on surveys. This is saying that 48% of people have figured out how much money that they need. Half of people, they're saying that figured it out, almost less than half have not figured it out. I would say this is 0.48% because a lot of us really don't understand how much money that they need to retirement. That's probably your first mistake when you're building your own retirement plan. Second is this. This proof's right here. Proof is in the pudding. Harvard, right here. They do this and they're looking at, all right, let's take a look. Let's write down a plan. When you graduate from Harvard, what are you going to do? What steps are you going to make? 84% had zero plan in place. Zero, right? 3% did. They followed these people. The 3%, they followed them 10, 20 years, 30 years. They made 10 times more money than these individuals. Does that tell you something? You need a plan. To bring the planner in, let's bring Big Al Clopine.
So do-it-yourself planning. It's a lot of us do it, and a lot of us do it well. Some maybe don't, but we're gonna have a show to sort of break it down so you can see if you're doing it correctly. Right off the bat, let's figure out if you're a good do-it-yourself candidate. Number 2 is, are you saving enough? Number 3 is, what kind of mistakes are you making? And number 4 is behavioral mistakes, particularly with regards to investing. If you miss one of these things and you're retired, it's like you can't go back. I mean, or you may have to go back.
Right. I mean, I think you and I say this often, is that everyone needs a financial plan.
Correct.
But everyone doesn't necessarily need a financial planner, as long as they get the right information.
Right.
Right. So if I'm traveling to Minnesota, which I don't want to go right now because it's freezing cold and there's like 10 feet of snow. But if I did, you'd probably get a map. You know what I mean? You would probably map it out and figure out where you go. But with retirement planning, most people just say, all right, well, I'm 65. Let's jump. I think I got enough money and let's do this.
Well, and you're right when you said most people don't have any idea, because we talk to people every day, every week, and it's like, do you know how much you need to save? And the answer is no. Let's look at what makes a good do-it-yourself planner. Number 1 is saving diligently and saving effectively. Some of us will save for a while, and then something comes up, emergencies, and then we stop saving, and then we forget to restart again. Those that are successful at this really have a long-term plan.
Well, yeah, without question. It's like, well, you know, I have to continue to save. If you don't continue to save, you're not going to get to your goals, right? So all of a sudden you get a windfall of cash, and there's something that's called lifestyle creep. You get a raise, you get a bonus, and we should be saving that, but what do? We end up spending it. It's like, wow, I got a little bit of windfall. You know what? Let's go on that vacation. Let's remodel that house. And you know what? I'm not going to hire a contractor. I'm going to do it myself and probably blow it up. Right? Looking at retirement, I mean, this is key. You need a plan, right?
You do, and then you also need a nest egg. And this, a lot of people kind of miss this one. It's like you have to have an emergency fund. Another one, Joe, is keeping your debt under control. And when you're entering retirement, a lot of folks have mortgages, and that may or may not be okay. In some cases, it's okay. But a lot of folks have credit card debt. They have lines of credit. They have car loans. They still have student loans. That's not the best way to enter retirement.
You know, one of the biggest assets that most people have that they don't necessarily understand is their income. And so when they have debt, a lot of times what we do is we just focus on the debt. We pile all of our cash to our debt because I don't want to have any debt when I retire. But then the problem is that you don't necessarily have any liquid cash to create income. So you have to properly invest for your goals. So if my goal is retirement, is it putting my kids through school? Is it passing wealth to the next generation? You have to look at all of these things to make sure that you are doing things appropriately with that cash that's coming in. And then you have to have a sound backup plan because everything in life does not go smoothly, I'm telling you, right? So if you're thinking that your plan is absolutely perfect, which it could be today, but guess what? Tomorrow the wheels might come totally off the bus, and what are you going to do? This sound backup plan is key. You have to have contingencies because life happens.
Life does happen. And Joe, I think a big part of financial planning is doing some of the initial math. In other words, how much do you need to save? And I think a lot of folks, even though the survey says you guys are calculating this, you're really not. We're going to show you how to calculate it.
Let's look at a quick example here. Now, we have a 40-year-old and a 60-year-old because sometimes there's certain things that you want to calculate when you're creating a retirement plan. So I'll start with a 40-year-old. Let's say I want to spend $80,000 in my retirement, but I'm not going to retire tomorrow, so I have to inflate this $80,000 with the cost of living or an inflation adjustment, right? So let's just assume a 3% adjustment for inflation on that $80,000. Well, I would need $168,000 at my retirement date, so almost double, given that 3% inflation. So my fixed income sources, let's just assume that I'm married and my spouse and I, we have $50,000 Social Security benefit today. But once I retire, right, there's a cost of living with Social Security, and that would be around $82,000. So I'm going to be short 86 grand. That is going to be my shortfall. So what my planning is that I got to figure out what my nest egg is going to be to create $86,000 of additional income on top of my fixed income. Same example here for a 60-year-old. Same spending, $80,000, but they're retiring in a few years, so that inflation adjustment is only $93,000. They have $55,000 of fixed income, Social Security, maybe pension. So their shortfall is 38. Alan, this is the first step, right? You got to look at if I'm not retiring for 20 or 30 years, or if I'm retiring in 5 years, it's still the same math.
Yeah, and then we look at something called the 4% rule, and that's simply taking a look at what you need in terms of your shortfall, multiply that by 25 or divide it by 4%, you get the same answer. That'll give you at least an idea of what your nest egg should be, Joe.
Yeah, so if I look at this, so again, the 40-year-old, $86,000 shortfall, you multiply $86,000 by 25, the 40-year-old's going to need $2 million roughly, $2.1 million. So if I take 4% of $2 million roughly, that gives me $86,000. That's the math. With a 60-year-old, the shortfall's $38,000, so you multiply $38,000 by 25, 950 grand, so they need roughly $1 million. So how do we get here? So let's assume the 40-year-old has 300 grand. Alan, what 40-year-old do you know that has 300,000 bucks?
Our example.
Yeah, he hangs out with some pretty cool 40-year-olds. All right, the 60-year-old, no, they have double that, $600,000. So what's the savings? Let's just assume that you can get a 6% rate of return on your money, right? So the 40-year-old, if they can save $1,200 a month from age 40 to full retirement age, guess what? They're going to meet their goal. It's that easy, right? I mean, it's not that easy to save $1,200, but the math is. You just have to start with what your goal is, how much money that you want to spend, and then just back everything out. If you can't save $1,200, or if I'm 60, $2,000, then you can adjust and adapt and then refine each year as you get closer to these ages.
Yeah, and Joe, and I think one of the things that happens when folks try to do this math is they figure out they're a little bit short. And so you might want to take a look at your expenses, and there's certain things that we might call regular, like your housing expenses, utilities, things that happen each and every month. You probably don't have a lot of control over that unless you downsize or move somebody somewhere else. But then there's these other expenses. Folks forget about periodic expenses like car repairs and insurance, and then there's all the extras like vacations and entertainment. All these things, Joe, need to be considered.
Yeah, so when you're on your YouTube channel, right, and you're fixing your car, which you probably shouldn't be doing, you can always rewind that and say, all right, I messed up here, I screwed up. If you have a certain plan in place, you can kind of adjust it. You can tweak things. Hey, should I spend a little bit less? Can I spend a little bit less? Can I make a little bit more? Should I work a little bit longer? There's a lot of things that you can do. Hey, we have a do-it-yourself retirement guide. You don't need to hire us. Do it yourself. Go to yourmoneyyourwealth.com, click on that special offer, and get your do-it-yourself retirement guide. We got to take a short break. When we get back, we have Matthew Horsley. He's a certified financial planner. We're going to break down some mistakes that you do-it-yourselfers make because he's the biggest do-it-yourselfer I've ever met, and he blows everything up, so he's the expert. We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back to the show. The show's called Your Money, Your Wealth. We're talking about do-it-yourself investing. Hey, does your house have all this stuff in it, right? Money Magazine, Investing Guide. Oh, we got the Retirement Guide, right? We got Fortune Magazine. This is how you make a fortune. I'm sure you do. If you're watching this show, I guarantee you your bathroom is filled with this stuff. Hey, we're going to get into some of the magazines, but the best magazine you can possibly get is go to yourmoneyyourwealth.com. Click on that special offer. We got a do-it-yourself retirement guide on yourmoneyyourwealth.com. Before we get into the good stuff, let's see how you did on the true-false question.
I can use the money in my Roth IRA as an emergency fund. And I would say that's generally true, Joe, but is that a good idea?
Well, it depends. If you need the money, I suppose. I don't know. I mean, because Roth IRAs, it's FIFO tax treatment, first in, first out. So at any age, you have full access to the money that you put in. Any contribution dollar that you've contributed to a Roth IRA, you have access to it. So yes, of course, you can use that for an emergency fund, but yeah, is it a good idea? Probably not. It's for retirement, not necessarily, right?
Yeah,
your
it would
emergency.
kind of, at least in my view, it'd be kind of a last resort. I mean, because it's really for your retirement. That's the whole point of it. But if you do make a contribution, you can pull it out at any age. And I think a lot of people don't really know that.
Right, and I mean it's a Roth, so it's compounding tax free, which is huge. So if it's the last resort, go for it.
Now,
because
one more thing though, Joe, the earnings, you have to wait at least 5 years or 59 and a half, whichever is longer. So you cannot pull those out necessarily without taxes and penalty.
When we're talking about do-it-yourself investing, one of the things that you guys are not doing that you have to do is to save consistently. It's funny, if you just take a look, let's say you have a lump sum and you have it and you're like, you know what, I just inherited $100,000. I don't think I need to save. But if you could just save a couple of bucks and then increase that couple of bucks each and every year, it makes a dramatic increase, Al.
It does, Joe. And I think really this is a really good way to illustrate it. And I like what you said. So let's say you're starting with $100,000 and I got 3 different scenarios. So the first one is you got that $100,000, you invest it, you're making 6% a year and you never add to it. What happens? Well, in 10 years, it's $179,000, not bad. 20 years, it's $321,000, and year 30, $574,000, not bad. But what happens if you actually save in addition to that? Like, let's say you save $3,000 into your 401k. Now you can see at each stage it's higher, $219,000 here after 10 years versus $279,000. Now it's $431,000 at 20 and $812,000. So almost $300,000 more just by saving. But what happens if you actually increase your savings? Like, let's say you're saving $3,000 a year. Every year you add another 1% of your pay. Maybe you're making $100,000, so you add $1,000 per year in your savings. So here, figuring that, still at a 6% rate of return. Here, after 10 years, it's $271,000. But look at this. Let's go right to the end. If you wait 30 years or do this 30 years, you're increasing your savings each and every year. Now you got over $1.6 million. This is the compounding of money, as well as saving a little bit more each year. And a lot of folks, they know they can save maybe $25,000 into their 401k if they're over 50 years of age, but they just can't imagine getting there. But if you do it incrementally, each year you add a little bit more, you can end up with a lot of savings.
Yeah, I mean, we had a gentleman that I still follow his advice. Well, I don't it's hard to follow it, but he's like, what I did is I saved 1% more every single month, right? We're just illustrating 1% more every single year, and it almost doubles your money if you didn't save it all. So if you can just think, start slow and then consistently build upon that. But before you start even thinking about that, you want to make sure that you have enough cash on hand. And so there's a lot of different things that you want to look at with cash too, Al.
Yeah, you do need an emergency fund, Joe. And thinking about this, 63% of Americans cannot even cover a $500 emergency. That's not right. You need to have an emergency fund to be able to handle emergencies. And so how much should you have? Let's take a look at this. This is recommended. This is from Vanguard, and we tend to agree with this. 3 to 6 months of living expenses, maybe 12 months. It really depends upon your profession. Like if you're in a profession with unsteady income or maybe a type of job that you don't know if you're going to have in the following year, you might need a larger amount, maybe 12 months. But 3 to 6 months is at least a start. So besides knowing how much to save and figuring out what emergency fund you need, you also got to figure out the mistakes that you need to be avoiding as a do-it-yourselfer. That's why we have Matt Horsley. He's a senior advisor at Pure Financial Advisors.
Hey, thanks, Al. I got Matt Horsley right here. Matty, how are you doing?
Doing great, Joe. How are you?
Hey, we're talking about do-it-yourself retirement. And I couldn't have think of a better person to talk about do-it-yourself stuff, because I think you've blown up your entire house once or twice.
Well, we've had to have a couple of projects redone.
Yes.
But everything's working properly now.
See, well, that's all that matters. Mistakes, because you are a man of mistakes.
I think we all are creatures of mistakes.
We are.
Yeah.
When it comes to retirement, let's kind of go through high level, just few things that if I'm looking at doing this on my own, okay, what are some high level things of someone in the profession for 25 years helping people retire? I mean, what are some of the mistakes that people are making?
Yeah, I think in the years that I've been doing this, I think the biggest mistake that people make is they become too emotionally involved with their investments. And a Nobel Prize winning economist that we all know of, Ken French, said, money is like a bar of soap. The more you handle it, the smaller it gets. And
was that Warren Buffett or Ken French?
Are you challenging me, Joe?
Well, I don't know.
We'll look it up later.
Got it.
At any rate, I guess the point is that the more that people are emotionally swayed by what's happening in the market, there's really two emotions in investing that drive people's investment decisions, and those are fear and greed.
Sure.
And we see that all the time. And really what happens is that we all want to say, well, when the market is low is when I want to buy, and when it's high is when I want to sell. We're all taught from a very young age is to buy low and sell high. But what do we know people do in reality? And the numbers absolutely back this up, is that people buy high and they sell low. Right? It's like going to the department store and buying something when it's like the highest price possible, and then you want to return it once it's on sale and you get the sale price when you return it, right?
Yeah, but I mean, you can see why people do that.
Of course.
Well, let's say I'm 60 years old, right? I'm trying to do my retirement plan, and then this is the most money I've ever had in my entire life. In your 20s and 30s, people aren't doing it, don't care, because who cares if you lose 20% of 10 grand?
Sure.
But if you lose 20% on $1 million, that's a lot of money.
Right,
so that emotion kills you.
Right, and that's the key, is as you approach retirement, like you guys were talking about earlier in the show, is you have to have a solid game plan in place. Because what I see, my experience in the business, is as you get close to retirement, let's say you're 3-4 years from retirement, or you're actually in your first couple of years in retirement, now the money that you've saved, you almost feel like, well, I can't afford to see the losses that I did when I was younger. But if you think about it, let's say you retire at age 65, your money might need to last you for another 30 years. You're going to see several corrections, bear markets, all throughout the course of the way. But if you're disciplined about your thinking and the way you're investing, you're going to be just fine as long as you stick to your strategy and your game plan moving forward.
Right, and I think that's a really good point, because let's say if you're 30 and you're retiring at 60, that's a 30-year time frame. A 30-year-old's not necessarily freaking out when the market goes down. So when you're 60, you still got that 30-year time frame, but our emotions, because the numbers are so much bigger.
And people forget about that, because when they're working, you're so like geared towards, well, I'm working, making money, saving money, putting the kids through school and all that stuff, that you forget about your investments, which is probably the best thing for most people to do. And when you look at the reality, what the numbers actually dictate is that the stock market, if you look at the overall Russell 3000 over the course of the past 20 years, has averaged about a 9.5% return. The average investor doing it on their own is average almost less, about half of that, 5.5% per year. So what does that say is that people are doing the wrong things, they're making mistakes. And like you said earlier, once you blow these things up and make some of those mistakes, you can't recover.
Sure. What about diversification? What do you see
So,
there?
I mean, key is we've heard the old adage, don't put all of your eggs in one basket, right? And when people are looking to invest their money, they hear, and I think the financial media sometimes does a really, really poor job of educating people about this type of stuff, because people look and they see, well, the Dow Jones and the S&P 500, they think if I just invest my money in the S&P 500 index and maybe a bond index and a little bit of money in international stocks, I'll be just fine. Well, we want people to fully diversify and have their funds invested across 16 different asset classes into 14,000 stocks across 50 different countries around the world. That's what gives you true diversification. So what does that do in the end? Well, if you have a game plan in place, and let's come back to that says, okay, well, if I've done all my proper planning, my proper tax planning, cash flow projections, I've accounted for inflation and different things that can happen along the way, I need to achieve my hurdle rate or my family index or rate of return, which might be 5.5% or 6% per year. So if that's the case, how do I build my portfolio to achieve those returns with the least amount of risk possible? What most people do when they come in to see us in our office is, well, they want the biggest returns and the best returns they can get. That's where fear creeps into it. Sure. If you're diversifying properly, controlling fees, rebalancing appropriately as you should be, because what happens is you have your initial allocation within your portfolio, right? We've all seen those pie charts. They want a certain percentage towards large cap, small cap, intermediate bonds, international, and real estate. But what happens over time is that those pieces of the pie are going to start to change, right, based upon market performance. So you have to rebalance properly. Those are all the things that if you're doing this on your own, you have to control, you have to pay attention to. I'm not saying, I talked about the bar of soap reference earlier. You want to handle your money, but handle it properly according to your game plan.
You know, and I think lastly with risk, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding or mistakes, because every investment that you choose, right, there's risks associated with it. If I'm sitting in cash, I have a risk, right? It's inflation risk. If I am all in one stock, it's concentrated risk, and so on. So I think when someone approaches retirement, they look at risk maybe differently than they should.
Well, it really has to be. And so when you diversify properly, as we just talked about, it's going to narrow the scope of the expected returns within your portfolio if you do that properly. But I guess one of the main points here in terms of risk is take risk where the market rewards you for taking risk. Most people don't get that. They're looking to try to maybe time the market, get in and get out based upon their hunch or based upon some of the stuff they read in some of these articles that tells them this is the 10 biggest ways to make yourself rich quick or whatever. But in terms of taking risks, there's certain areas of the market that reward you for taking risk. And we've talked about this in the past, is that small companies over time should outperform larger companies, and value stocks should outperform growth stocks. There's certain areas where if you have a slight tilt towards those areas of the market, you can achieve higher expected returns than if you just go out and buy an index with the S&P 500, for instance.
It's Matt Horsley, folks. Wonderful job. Wish I had you here all day, man. You're a hell of a lot
I'd
better
love to
than
be
Big
here
Al.
all day.
Yeah, Big Al's just hanging out. I'm just kidding, bud.
Thanks, Joe.
Hey, we got to take a short break. What I want you guys to do, though, go to Your Money or Wealth. Go to special offer, because we got a do-it-yourself retirement guide. DIY retirement guide. Click on that, download it right there in the comfort of your own home. We'll be right back to wrap up the show. Show's called Your Money or Wealth. Hey, welcome back to the show. Show's called Your Money or Wealth. Talking about do-it-yourself investing, do-it-yourself retirement, I guess. We got your do-it-yourself retirement guide. Just go to yourmoneyorwealth.com. Click on that special guide. We're wrapping up the show, but before we do that, let's see how you did on the true false.
If the price of my stock investment falls by 50%, if I'm patient and wait for the stock to appreciate 50%, then I'll break even. Joe, that's actually false, and I think a lot of people don't really understand why. And let me show you guys. So if your stock falls 50%, $10,000 stock falls in half, so now it's worth $5,000, so 50% drop. That $5,000, if it earns 50%, that's only $2,500. You need to earn 100% on your return to get back to your original investment. If you lose 10%, you got to earn 11%. So just be aware of that. When your stocks go down by a certain percent, you need a higher percent for recovery.
Great point, because that's why you got to mitigate your risk, especially in retirement, because if you lose that 10, all you need is 11 to get back. If you lose 50, you need 100. Hey, it's that time of the show. Let's ask the experts, folks.
Hey, Joe and Al, I've got a question for you. If inflation continues to rise, should I invest more in bonds or think about changing the way I invest my money?
Joseph, what do you think?
You know, inflation is is one of those things. It's a silent tax. You don't have to change anything. You know, when you hear things, it's like, oh, is inflation on the rise? How do we know that? We don't have a crystal ball. You have to have a strategy. You have to have a plan in place to make sure that you're accomplishing your goals. You have to anticipate inflation of 2 or 3%. For the last several years, we've almost been in a deflationary period. Did you change your investment strategy then? Probably not. So don't get all hyped up in the noise and start switching things. That's the biggest mistake you do-it-yourselfers do. Have a strategy, keep with it. Let's go to the last email, Al, and let's get out of here.
Roger from San Marcos. I just received a mailer that told me if I set up a P.O. box in Nevada, I could claim Nevada residency. Is that a good way to avoid California tax? Very quickly, Roger, the answer is no.
It's a good way to go to jail, Roger. It's a good way to go to jail. That's a different type of retirement. You get 3 square meals, right? Nice little shelter. They have a really cool gym. It's called The Yard.
That's exactly right. You actually gotta live there. You need to move there to make this work.
Hey, let's wrap this up. What did we learn today? Hey, if you're a do-it-yourselfer, this was a great show for you, I hope. We got a do-it-yourself retirement guide, DIY retirement guide. Say that 5 times fast. Just go to yourmoneyyourwealth.com because you got to get a plan. You got to save consistently. You got to avoid these crazy mistakes Mr. Horsley talked about. And, you know, our behavior gets in our way. Our emotion gets in our way. That fear and greed, it's the killer when it comes to investing. Hopefully you love the show. We got to get out of here. For Big Al Clopine, I'm Joe Anderson. You just watched another episode of Your Money, Your Wealth.